Hello, welcome to a special Christmas edition of Gardener's World. Now, the truth is that Christmas is a funny time of year for the gardener because the garden is pretty dormant. There's a sense of being at the end of a long year, but also it's poised. It's poised for what's coming up in the next year. So it's a time for reflection and also a time just to make the most of the season, and that's precisely what we'll be doing today here at Berryfields. Now, where are the others? Ah, here you all are in the warm.
Are you going to come and help us make our feast?
I am. I've got some decorations, but what are we going to be doing next?
Well, I'm going to be planting loads of fragrant winter-scented plants and revelling in the colour of winter.
Well, that sounds great. I'm going to be delving into the history of the Christmas tree and looking at modern alternatives to use in the garden.
And I'm going to make some natural decorations to go on Joe's tree and finding out what's about to pick the poinsettia at the post as our favourite Christmas plant.
Well, that's good, because it's not my favourite plant, I have to confess. I see you're tucking into the wine
Well,
already.
it's never too early, is it?
I think what I'm going to do next is go and gather all the vegetables, because otherwise we're going to get out of sync, aren't we? So I'll go and do that.
And you can have a drink when you come back.
I will do. Save some for me. When I was talking about a feast, I meant literally that. And we've been preparing our feast for Christmas here in the vegetable garden at Berryfields since last spring, just as people would have done so on this site since at least early medieval times. The Feast of Christmas was a real event where you took all the produce you could, whether you grew it or you raised it, and then you made the most of it. You made luxury and indulgence at a particularly low time of the year. Now, there are shocking figures about the mileage it takes to get your Christmas dinner to you. The government says that it's at least 24,000 miles. The Soil Association actually says it's much more than that. It's more like 49,000 miles. That's twice around the world to get the food to your plate. Now, that is bonkers. If you shop locally at farmers markets, apparently it's only about 300 miles. But if you grow it yourself, in your garden, in your allotment, then it's got nowhere to travel. It's completely seasonal, it's completely fresh, and it's really good fun to do. Now, our Swedes have suffered badly from the drought. They are very small because Swedes need time to bulk up. And of course, anyone who's grown Swede knows that a decent Swede is considerably bigger than that. But we'll have a taste. Mashed Swede with salt and pepper goes brilliantly well with turkey. So if you've got them, that's a very good Christmas vegetable. And the turnips have done much better. You can see these here, they were sown later, and they are also wonderful. You can boil them, you can roast them, you can glaze them. They look fantastic. I mean, look at the gleam on that. These shining, shining vegetables. And like all root crops, really valuable at this time of year because they have sugar. And traditionally, root vegetables were grown to add sweetness to what was pretty much a sugar-free diet, and therefore highly valued. Now, Swedes and turnips, most people know about. Not enough people grow or eat, but certainly they're familiar. But I bet you don't know what this one is. This one here is salsify. Now, salsify or salsify and scorzonera were well known in Tudor times and a bit later, but they've fallen out of favour now. But another really good root vegetable that will keep, like the Swedes and turnips, perfectly well in the ground, whatever the weather. And you can see here, if I pull that up, it's got a white root, looking like something like a parsnip or a carrot, and was known as the oyster plant, partly because it tasted a bit like oysters, partly because it was used in stews to simulate oysters, which were also used, particularly in Victorian times, because they were cheap. But a fabulous vegetable, easy to grow, easy to store, and distinctly exotic, just as rare and unusual as anything that you have to fly over from halfway across the world. Now, there are some vegetables that you really cannot imagine Christmas dinner without, and I think parsnips is one of them. And they're one of those few crops that actually get better with a bit of frost. That intensifies the sugars in them. And this is a variety called Dagger, which is actually supposed to be on the small side, although I would say it was a pretty good size. And to find out how to grow parsnips at their very best, we went along to Shenstone and the Bartlett family and spoke to father and son, Roy and Rod.
We grow 550 acres of parsnips, which is approximately 7,000 tonnes, and we would market 25 tonnes a day for 10 months of the year. What we try and do is harvest our parsnips at 5 a.m. in the morning, bring them into the packing station, have the parsnips washed, trimmed, packed and ready to move off the farm by lunchtime, and we can confidently say that we can get parsnips from ground to plate in 24 hours. Yeah, the two varieties that you're more likely to see being grown in this country are Gladiator and Javelin. These would be sown in February, March and April to give them their optimum growing time.
If people want to grow their own parsnips, they can grow Gladiator and Javelin quite easily in their own gardens. Light, sandy soils are always the best.
Every family in the country puts a parsnip round their turkey, which means for us that we have to triple our output from 25 tonnes a day to 75 tonnes a day.
So I think the parsnip has gone a little bit more upmarket in so much that people have experimented in cooking it in different ways, adding different things to it, even down to parsnip crisps. I myself like my parsnips roasted. Christmas time we roast them in oil.
We feel Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without parsnips.
As you walk along here, you can smell this lavender. It's really fragrant. And I suppose most of the time you associate scent with the summer, but Christmas is such an important time to celebrate beautiful perfume. And what I'm going to do is plant this special border here, full of scented plants. So every time we walk in and out of the front door, we're assailed by this wonderful perfume. And I'm going to start off with a real favourite. This is Viburnum bodnantense Dawn. And these winter flowering viburnums have fabulous perfume. They have small, really tight pink buds which open to these delicate white flowers. And you can smell it from here. It's a very sweet, almost sort of honeyed kind of fragrance. If it gets a bit out of hand, you can prune it really, really hard. Just take out some of the old growths. And all winter long, it's going to be flowering its head off. Now, I'm going to fill in between with heather. Heather's a great plant for insects. And when you think about winter scent, you need to remember, really, that why on earth should flowers actually produce perfume in the winter? Because they want to attract pollinating insects. And those insects are few and far between at this time of year. But if you're pumping out all this perfume, you're pretty likely to get whatever hoverflies or bees are hanging around. Now, I'm really excited about this. This is Sarcococca. Not the easiest thing to say, but it's got a nice ring to it. Now, at first sight, it looks quiet, a quiet little shrub. But here, it's covered in these buds. And as these open into tiny little green tassel-like flowers, the perfume that they exude is just beyond belief. It is just delightful. And they're such incredibly tolerant plants too, because they'll put up with really alkaline soil, they'll grow equally well in acid conditions, they'll grow out in full light, and they'll grow in shade. So you couldn't really do much better than that.
Well, one scent you can't beat at Christmas, and it's my favourite, is the smell of a freshly cut Christmas tree. And this was cut just a few hours ago from a local supplier. Now, you may think that the Christmas tree is the ultimate British Christmas symbol, but actually, you'd be wrong. It's not very British at all. Allegedly, it was in the 1530s that the true birth of the modern-day concept of a Christmas tree occurred. The German evangelist Martin Luther, who first translated the Bible into German, was said to have been enchanted by the beauty of bright stars shining through the woodland on a winter's night. The story goes that to illustrate this to his children, he placed candles on a small tree outside the door and created the first Christmas tree. A picture of the Luther family and their tree, painted much later in history, has almost turned this popular legend into an historical fact. By the 1600s in Germany, Christmas trees were being decorated and were seen decked out with apples, rolled wafers, sweets and crystallised sugar. So the custom of having a Christmas tree was popular as early as the 17th century. And for many Germans, the grandeur and significance of Christmas would be lost without a tree. In the UK, however, the custom wasn't introduced until the Georgian period by Queen Charlotte, the German wife of George III. However, it was almost 60 years later that those great advocates of Christmas, Prince Albert and Queen Victoria, were generally given credit for making the Christmas tree a great British tradition. The young and fashionable royal couple popularised the Christmas tree, and every self-respecting, well-to-do Victorian family just had to have one. However, in early Victorian times, trees were mainly imported from Germany, so were relatively small and always placed in a pot on the top of a table. The presents were clearly displayed underneath the tree and left unwrapped, and some of the smaller presents were hung from the branches. A very different tradition to what we do today. By the end of the Victorian period, Christmas trees were the absolute height of fashion and completely essential in both affluent upper-class and aspiring middle-class homes. Trees became a status symbol. The larger and more elaborately decorated, the more affluent and more important the family. Well, that's the story of how our Christmas tree tradition was born. But later on in the programme, we'll be finding out about the rise of the artificial tree.
While Joe's putting up the tree, I'm going to get on with making some Christmas decorations. And this year we're going to go for a very different look, concentrating really on natural things. So we've got lots of beautiful seed pods that we harvested earlier in the year. And we are going to have some baubles, but not as many, and we're not having to buy any. And so the money that we're saving on that, we actually have spent on cut flowers. Now, cut flowers will last really well in water, particularly if you can put a drop of vinegar or bleach into their water. And again, through the year, we've been collecting different things. We've got test tubes here, which you can get at any good florist or garden centre. And these are rather brilliant. These are just little herb jars from a supermarket, which once we've finished the herbs, we've collected them together. And they're too small for jam, but they're ideal for hanging on the tree. And all you want to do is get some nice covered florist reel wire, and again you can get it in any good garden centre or good florist, and just wind it round like that, and then that will hang very easily on the tree. The flowers that we're using, that we've chosen, are all things that last really well, even inside. And so this is a lovely laundry lily, and that will last at least a week, if not more than that, in water. And chrysanthemums, this is a little one called Froggy, and that lasts really well, as do these beautiful large white chrysanthemums and the hypericum berries. And I'm going to put a lily in and just top it up with a little bit of the clear vinegar. So then in goes the lovely laundry lily, and that will give us fantastic scent. And I'm also going to make a combination of beautiful peacock feathers for another little mini arrangement.